What's up guys, I'm Phoenix Master 1 and welcome to my breakdown of the new Young banner that we have got for Fire Emblem Fates. And I'm gonna be breaking down this banner in simple language as per usual. So here we have got Young Camilla, and I definitely want to talk about her first because she is the star of this banner in my opinion, and she is easily one of the most ridiculous units that we have got this year. And we have got quite a lot of really strong units with Valentine Edelgard, Duo Rhea, Aided Yunaka, Lettering Sakura, just so many units, and Camilla is, in my opinion, in their ranks. So the reason why I say it is because she is easily one of the best melee nukes in the entire game. She combines the best things that you need for a melee nuke and does even more things, so it's just amazing. So she has got Axe of Dusk as her preferred weapon. This is a slaying axe with Canto Distant +1 built in it, and the max you can get is Canto 4. So you do not need to run Sigurd Ring to get the Canto out of it, and you mainly are going to be requiring extra movement from something like Rain Snap or Endless Tempest. That could be a thing that you could try and use, or just any kind of support. And then at sort of both player phase and enemy phase, on the foes in two spaces that are near a foe, you're going to be inflicting -7 speed and defense debuff, the Discord status, and the Deep Wound status. So this does mean that in the last man standing scenarios, in something like Summoner Duels, at the very end, you're not going to be able to debuff any foe, that is alone, that doesn't have any kind of, one of their allies near them. So it does have its limitations, but I think that this is definitely a really strong effect that, tries and give you the advantage earlier on a map. So the debuffs are useful along with the sabotage effect that you could try and inflict with the other units. And then Discord is also, as I said, helps you early on as units are going to be close together, so it doubles down on that. Deep Wounds does help you against the healing of Breath of Life, but it is not going to be helpful against Divine Nectar of Hathran because that is completely immune to Deep Wounds. So that's why Null Miracle is a bit more coveted than Deep Wounds at this point, because there's a lot of miracle effects, and unlike Valgar, she doesn't get that, but that's fine, she is still so strong. So with this weapon, she's able to get up to max 14 to all of her stats, and again, she is going to be depending on the number of foes in 3 rows and 3 columns centered on her, times 3 added with 5, so it goes well with the playstyle of requiring a lot of foes to function. So in the last man scenarios, again, you're not going to be getting as many stats, so that could come into the play, but for just winning the match, the early advantage is what you need. And she has got a big advantage in her true damage, which is limitless. So she's like Satoru Gojo here, and she has got the Valgar style of true damage because there's no cap to it. So it is as much as you can with the bonus and penalty status on the foe and the foes in 2 spaces of them times 3. So we have got a lot of units that can debuff the enemies heavily. There's middle of the turn debuffs, there is at start of turn debuffs, there's just so many debuffs that you can try and leverage for this kind of true damage. And this kind of true damage is so good that it doesn't matter what kind of damage reduction that the enemy has got. Shield Fighter with Pavis, or they've got Wily Fighter, flat damage reduction. This true damage is just so good if you use it well that you're going to be able to kill most of the things. There isn't really much that can be, used to stop you, especially with the effects that she's got in this weapon. So if she also gets cooldown +1 per attack, this can also give you the flexibility of triggering your specials again and again with your consecutive hits. And it can also help you with the Gale Force, even though nowadays you don't really use Gale Force as a special that much. But because Camilla herself doesn't get the extraction, it is something you could consider in certain game modes. But I would argue that you kind of need the damage output a bit more. But if you heavily support her, then she can easily, have the damage output with her true damage alone. And then she's got potent follow-up attack built in this. So that is amazing, and this is going to be working like the potent scale because it can give you the 80% strength of your follow-up attack if you are not able to double the enemy or brave attack the enemy, and most of the time you're going to be getting the 40% strength, which is fine because Erica ring is one of the best rings for her. She does not need Celica ring because she's got the warping. She does not need Sigurd ring. She already has the Kanto. It's not the hardest to give her the +1 movement, and she can already warp with the pass, so it's not that big of a priority. And you can just run the new Emblem Erica ring, which can let you brave attack, and then you've got the potent hit. So you can hit 5 times essentially with her trample, which is extremely powerful. Usually we're going to be seeing Hardy Bearing on the far saviors, but Camilla is going to be forcing Hardy Bearing on the near saviors as well, because it is going to be an opportunity cost. You cannot have 2 Hardy Bearings as the Sacred Seal. So this is a pretty good weapon, and if this is good, then you gotta see her, preferred scale, which is gonna be even better. And then she has got No Quarter as her special, giving her the full piercing, so this could be helpful with her trample, but I still think that Haste Slice could be a good viable option as a tech option, because you're gonna be facing the Hardy Bearing near saviors to counter her, and they're gonna be counter attacking, so it can help you live, and it also has the pre-impulse built in it. And while Camilla is extremely powerful, she doesn't really have the pre-impulse, so it can help you just front load your damage even more. And then she has got her trample new skill, which is flyer exclusive, and it's for the melee flyer. So for the first time in history, I guess, flying dragons are not left alone, so even they can use it, and this is a really good scale. So this is going to be giving you +7 attack and speed in the combat, and if the foe is infantry or armored, which a lot of decent tanks are going to be, if there's any kind of that foe, or if you're in 2 spaces of a divine vein, which Camilla has no trouble inflicting, or if you've got any kind of difficult terrain, then you get another additional +3 attack and speed. So I love Trample from Fates. I think it's such a cool skill in Fates, and now here it just gives you so much bang for your buck as a melee flyer. It also gives you +5 true damage in the combat. So with the consecutive hits that you can get with the Emblem Erica ring with potent follow-up attack, this is going to be paying dividends, and it is not going to be getting added to the AoE specials, unlike the Slash skill, so they still have their use case for those kinds of playstyles, as Trample is mainly there for the damaging specials. And it also gives you the Desperation effect, so this is like the active lookout for the melee flyers essentially, so this is good compression and helps you nuking, and also it is going to be a player phase skill, so it's not exactly a skill that you're going to be slapping on every single flyer, because not every single flyer is going to be purely player phase focused. They may be mixed phase, so in that case, attack speed excel can help you, just survive. But for Camilla, she's there to completely just wipe off the enemy from the map. And then she's got her preferred skill, Tut Tut. I'm not sure what this means. I don't think there's anything like that for Camilla in Fates. Her personal skill is not called that. So she's got Pass built in it, which is easily one of the strongest effects in the game right now, because warp blocking is quite prevalent with higher ground, lower ground, barricade, and it's essential to pretty much gatekeep a lot of melee flyers or melee nukes essentially, or even ranged nukes, which may not have Pass built in their kit, like Ada Yunaka or Emblem Celica. In the case of Emblem Celica, she does have her ceiling in the amount of damage that she can do, but still she does have the usage of Legendary Sakura now, so she can function with the certain support of a tree that we have got in the last Fae book. And then this kind of pass is also going to be meaning that you don't really need to run that as a slot B. We don't really have a Sacred Seal. There isn't really any kind of pass status, so right now in the game, it's not the easiest to get, and for a lot of melee nukes like Restvalgar, Restvalgar, it comes at an opportunity cost. So the fact that you've got this built in your slot B skill is amazing, and it just adds to the prowess of Camilla as a melee nuke. So that's why I said that I think that she's easily one of the strongest melee nukes, if not the strongest one easily, because of her potent follow-up attack, the pass, the double warping effects that she's got. So she's got the aerial maneuvers warping, which we have seen, but we haven't really seen a 5-space warping near any kind of divine vein. So it doesn't have to be your own divine vein, it can also be the enemy's divine vein. This is kind of similar to aided Yunaka. So sometimes in summoner duels I've seen people use Ice Lock against Yunaka, and it just comes to bite you back, as Yunaka can warp using that divine vein. So it's not always the best thing, and it can come to bite you back, and the danger zone is not going to be shown until you set up that divine vein, and she of course sets that up. So it's incredibly versatile and essentially gives her the the range on the entire map, because you're just able to warp anywhere when there's any kind of divine vein, and divine veins are an essential part of the game now. Either she's going to be setting it up or the enemy is going to be setting it up. Either way, she's going to be able to warp, which is a win-win. And it's quite a dangerous effect, so I don't want to see too many units with this, because as I said, it doesn't have the limited scope that you need to apply the divine vein or some kind of negative status effect. It can just be divine vein even of the enemy. And to herself and the allies in 2 spaces, she gives out the +6 attack and speed buff and the 50% damage reduction piercing status. So if you choose to not run no quarter, it's completely fine, because she already is flexible, and I believe Legendary Camilla did introduce this kind of status effect, so it does make sense on her. And at sort of turn, she has got the Divine Vein Haste terrain setup on the closest foes and the foes in 2 spaces, and in the trailer you can see how insane this is. So we haven't really got at sort of Divine Vein that can be inflicted onto the enemy. Usually the Divine Vein that can be set up at sort of turn is going to be in your proximity, it's not going to be on the enemy. So this is extremely good, because this can override the ice terrain, the stone tiles, and this can essentially help you counter some of the units that depend on the divine vein essentially. And this is going to be enabling the warping, so this can help you just have better mobility. And while you can apply the middle of the turn terrain by using an action of a unit like Attuned Hector, for example, that we all got for free, still, you gotta move in middle of the turn, and that may not be possible in every single game mode. So very powerful. And then she debuffs the foe for -5 speed and defense. She's got true damage based on 20% of her speed, so she's got another layer of true damage that is scaling off her speed in case the enemy does not have some kind of penalty or bonus status effect. So that is just there for the good measure, and that can just mean that Camilla is gonna be just working really well as a melee nuke, even with different skills or different play styles. So that flexibility is something I appreciate. And then she's got full null follow built into her slot B, so that's useful. And then she's got guidance 4, as she's not going to be able to run Soaring Echo, and it does make sense, to give the warping to your infantry and armor allies that need the most a lot of times compared to the flyers. So it certainly has its usage, but you can also use any kind of movement buffing scale like Endless Tempest, for example, to just have that consistency. And Fatal Smoke is going to be an option, but I feel like Young Camilla doesn't need it as much, because she already has the Potent Follow-Up Attack, the Limitless True Damage, and all of that is a recipe for killing the enemy. And that's why I think that Camilla is easily one of the best nukes in the game, if not the best one when it comes to melee nuking. Because while she does lack the extra action, you can always try and outsource it using Duo Hathrin or Mythic Hathrin with the Divine Nectar, so you can get that action economy in summoner duels. So she doesn't inherently have the extra action like some of the units, but when it comes to absolutely killing your enemies and doing the carnage, I think that Young Camilla is going to be excelling far above the others that we've got, because as I said, other units have got this kind of limitless true damage like Tres Valkyrs, but they do not have this kind of crazy warping or pass built in their slotty skill. It's just compression to an insane degree. And I also think that you're going to be able to kill Duo Rhea easily with her damage output, with her consecutive hits. And that's why I've started to use Deflect Melee on my near save Duo Rhea, because after Emblem Erica Ring, that kind of brave attacks are a commonplace. So Camilla is going to be enforcing even more of that. So extremely powerful unit, and certainly the star of the banner. As I said at the start, and this unit just surpasses the duo unit in my opinion alone, just with the preferred skill and the weapon that she's got. Absurd melee nuke. And then we have got our 4-star focus in Young Elise. So she is gonna be introducing a new skill as a cavalry healer, and she also has her preferred staff, which a lot of staff units do not, and this is gonna be New Ortana all over again. So I certainly do not mind this trend of giving value to the 4-star focus units, because for the low spenders and free-to-play players, you can always try and gamble with your free summon and try and get the 4-star focus unit. And maybe if you end up with a 4-star focus, then you can just get the value more out of your free summon. So I certainly appreciate that, but because she's a 4-star focus, she doesn't get the slaying. Instead, she gets the +3 speed, and she also has the Canto built in her weapon. So that's good because she doesn't need to run any kind of Fortress Echo, and she does have the flexibility for the future. And it is bare minimum going to be 1 movement, so that does help you with the movement and positioning when you run Ice Lock or Magic Shield Plus on these kinds of healers, which are essential for getting the most value out of them, especially Ice Lock. That is one of the ways of trying to stop the nukes like Young Camilla that have got pass in their kit. So Ice Lock and the Ice Terrain, that is going to be going up in middle of the turn. So the built-in Canto on these kinds of range cavaliers is nice because I don't want to run Sigurd Ring a lot of times on them because they don't get the extra movement. And then to herself and the allies in 2 spaces, she gives out the +6 attack and speed buff, the treachery status, and cooldown +1. Now treachery status is basically going to be giving you the true damage based on the visible buffs that you've got, so Elise can help you with that. But keep in mind that we have got a lot of lull and dull effects that can ignore the visible buffs of the enemies, and we have got lull attack defense on Xander himself in this batch on the Grail unit. I'm not sure why they had to do that, but I guess it does make sense, and it's also inherently built into a lot of modern skills, like the fortune skills that we've got on the beast unit, so it can help you just stop that kind of true damage. So it's not that insane of an effect. I feel like treachery is probably best used for AoE bombing, and I say bombing because that kind of true damage gets added into your AoE special regardless of the enemy having some kind of dull or lull effect. And we've also got free-to-play unit like Marnie with the dull alt status, which is a pretty commonplace, so not the most insane. And she also gives out the cooldown +1 support, which is probably going to be a lot better when you combine it with Null Guard. So it can help you nuke better. She also has Wrathful Staff built in it, and that's why she's not going to be needing any kind of sway skill. She also can get up to Omni +14 to all of her stats. She does have the essential true damage, which is need for nuking, based on 20% of her speed. And then she's got the full null follow-up, so if she decides to nuke with the Lin Ring, she certainly has the tools with the true damage, but it is of course not going to be as insane as a premium healer like Legendary Sakura, of course. And Legendary Sakura does enable a lot of this kind of hit and run nuking with Young Camilla. And this kind of weapon can work even on a budget because you're going to be powering up your nukes with the effects and the visible buffs. And she's got Holy Panic, not the best special in my opinion for the healers. I think Glitter of Light and Holy Pressure are just way better because Glitter of Light provides you with the middle of the turn flash status, which cannot be cleansed, and Holy Pressure can double down with the war blocking Ice Lock to just be really annoying to prevent any kind of movement and approach options of the enemies. So she does need a lot of things on high investment, but what she does not need is a slotted skill, and this is the first time that we've got a new tier 4 slotted skill on a 4-star focus. So she's got attack speed tidings, which is basically the sway version of the skill, but it has got the dazzling staff built in it, so it can be helpful to many of the healers. I do not remember for a fact, but for a video I was trying to just take a look at all of the preferred staff units, and a lot of the staff units usually had Wrathful Staff built in their weapon. Even a free-to-play unit like Cornelia, for example, a really powerful staff unit still has got that. So this kind of dazzling staff is something that can be helpful to those kinds of units built in their slot A. So I would say that it might be more useful than the sway scale. So this is also good for the healer enjoyers like myself, and she does have even recovery. I mainly just use it in summoner duels at times, but there are certainly better skills that you could run. And she can just run defense, resistance, inside hone whenever that comes out to fully buff up her allies and give another status effect. So that is something you should be waiting as a big Elise fan if you're going to be investing heavily into her. So really good 4-star focus, nothing insane, but also pretty solid and quite viable with the options that healers have got. Ice Lock Plus is ridiculous in its value, and Lin Ring also makes them useful as you support, as I said, with the Holy Pressure or Glitter of Light. And then we have got the duo unit of this banner in Duo Male Corrin. So he is a blue armor dragon, like you wouldn't expect someone like him. Like, where is your armor? Even comparatively, your dragon skills are probably not as tough as someone like Rima, for example. So that is kind of hilarious and a missable thing if you just ignore the fact that they're kids. So yeah, armor dragon, and they've got Dusk Stone as their preferred weapon. This does have a lot of small words, but that just means that I get to simplify it even better when it comes to something like this. So I've tried my best, and this has got the slaying built in it. It has got the Hexblade against the ranged enemies, and it's sort of turn and the enemy phase, except for summoner duels, because summoner duels inherently doesn't have the concept of player phase or enemy phase. It's a turn-based mode, and you also give this to yourself and the allies in 2 spaces. So they've got the Draconic Hex, which is a pretty iconic skill of Corrin from Fates, and this is finally in there in some form. And this Draconic Hex is not the most insane, but it pretty much helps you if you do not visibly debuff the enemies and if they cleanse the debuffs. So it is going to be giving you the value there because it essentially has the in combat Omni -4 tier 4 seal effect. So that's not the most common because people are not going to be running seal skills in their slot B out of their own free will, I think. So this is a good status effect to give to your allies in 2 spaces, and a unique one at that. And he also has the Time Pulse 4 built in it, so he can always have the special up, which is already a 2 cooldown special, which becomes a 1 cooldown special. So at least he can always loop it, which is good as an armor because you really have no scope of running Time Pulse 4 in your slot C. You pretty much would have to depend on Halloween Asker if it wasn't for this. And he also gets Omni plus 14 to all of his stats. If he triggers Savior, then the value is going to be max 14, which is going to be the case in most scenarios. And then he has got up to 15 flat damage reduction and 15 true damage, which isn't going to be there against or for AoE specials. And it also is going to be treated as 15 if you trigger the Savior. So pretty easy to do it. And then he also has a unique effect in Scowl. I mean, not the unique effect, but you also have Brave Attack Scowl. So that isn't really a thing that we have got in the game, and that kind of mimics the Negating Fang 2 in a way with its consecutive triggers. So we have Fallen Veil with the Follow-Up Scowl, which isn't the same thing as Brave Attack Scowl. And while Scowl, in my opinion, like, I wouldn't put too much of my eggs into that basket, but the Brave Attack Scowl is gonna be useful because there is the Emblem Erica ring, and there is gonna be the Null Guard and the special triggers. And a lot of times the nukes may run Miracle just to survive it. So there, the Scowl doesn't mean much because you cannot Scowl the defensive specials like Pavis, Aegis, or Miracle. So against the Miracle nukes, this isn't going to be giving you much value, and that's one of the things that a lot of nukes would try and do, like Attune Micaiah, for example. She can just opt to run Miracle. Runa is also an option. There are many melee nukes as well, so it does help not get countered by Scowl. So it's not the best effect, but it may prove to be useful, especially the Brave Attack Scowl that he has got built in this weapon. which is kind of unique. And then he has got his special in Dragon Fang Fire. I guess this is the scalding hot water, the infamous competitive Pokemon move that everyone loved using but hated facing. And this is going to be scaling off 40% of his resistance, which is pretty high. It also has Phantom Resistance +5 built in it, which is kind of expected out of these premium res check units. And he also gets the 40% unpierceable damage reduction, as well as to his AoE special, depending on his current special cooldown value. And most of the time it is going to be at 0 when it's going to be fully charged, so he's going to be able to get the 40% out of it. So the Time Pulse 4 in his weapon does make it easier, and he also has 50% damage reduction piercing if the special is triggered or ready, which it is going to be with the Time Pulse 4. So when you have not set up the water terrain, or if it's not up and it gets overridden, he still has some piercing. And Divine Water Terrain is not as much use because it was there mainly on Legendary Male Corrin, and he was not the best unit. He certainly got some tools, but still, Water Terrain was not on the level of Stone Terrain, Ice Terrain, stuff like that. Like, Ice Terrain was insane when Brave Female Robin came out. So Water Terrain, just as a recap, if you forgot, it pretty much acts as a difficult terrain for range foes, so it may help you run away from the range foes, but again, it doesn't matter if they've got the warping and pass, they're still going to be catching up to you, and then they retreat with Legendary Sakura, and it also gives you the 50% damage reduction piercing and the -5 speed, so that kind of piercing can help you as a brave attacking unit, and I think that it does have value with the Emblem Erica ring now. So as you can see, a lot of the effects are synergetic with the Emblem Erica ring, so it's almost as if they, planned these things. So the water terrain can be helpful for overriding the other terrains, but it's gonna be depending on your special triggers. So you gotta, enter the combat. It's not set up after an action like Attuned Hector. So it also lacks the flexibility that Legendary Male Corrin also lacked, because entering a combat is going to be taking a bit of commitment. And then he has got Primordial Boost as a slotted scale. So this is a armor exclusive scale, so Marnie can run it. It does give you the healing. It pretty much trades away the guard effect for the extra stats, which I do value on a lot of units. And the healing can also stack up and just help you, in multiple combats. So it can be helpful for armor exclusive units, but the +9 speed may not be most useful for the slow armors. And there are a couple of fast armors, but you can probably count them on a single hand when it comes to the viability of the absolute peak ones. So mainly Dual Fiorm is going to be loving it, and this kind of healing actually does have good synergy with the Miracle of Duo Rhea that she provides, because you can sustain your Miracle essentially even if you lack some kind of healing out there. So it is to be useful for the survival, and because you're a fast armor, you can try and use the Null Follow-Up. Speaking of Null Follow-Up, they've got Clever Fighter, which honestly I find kind of underwhelming now that Ed Scales is a thing, because Ed Scales does not have the speed check to give you the flat damage reduction. It also gives you full Null Follow-Up, just like this skill, and it also has the half frozen effect essentially, which can make it harder for the enemy to double you. And Ed Scales actually can help you kill enemies before they can double you, because you can make use of the Emblem Erica ring if you choose to have the offensive power over the Ike ring for the damage reduction, which is unpierceable. So that kind of thing can help you with the killing, but Clever Fighter gives you no true damage, so this is something that you will need to change. Lower Ground is nice. I figured they might make a speed version, but nope. Fast armors, they live and die by their speed, because it's pretty much trying to do too many things at the same time. Like, they gotta use their speed, defense, and resistance HP as their defensive stats, whereas a slow armor like Rhea pretty much just needs to invest in her defense and resistance and HP as her defensive stats. And even then, like, resistance is the main thing for Duo Rhea for her checks. So you can see how that kind of check can help you, but it can also come to bite you back against some of the high resistance opponents. So there's also an argument to be made there, but usually the speed does increase quite a bit compared to the other stats, in my opinion. So that's why the shelf life at the absolute peak for a fast armor is usually not seen as much as the slow armors. Like you've got Ascended Fiarm, you've got Duo Fiarm, you've got Brave, Female Corrin, as all of these examples pretty much if you want to go back and look at the history. So that's why, I wouldn't say that Duo Male Corrin is the star of the banner despite being a duo unit. I think that Camilla just easily wins it in that regard. And being a duo unit, he does have a duo skill which can help you in summoner duels for using as an extra action, which can be useful for the action economy, and it also helps you set up the Divine Vein Water for 2 terrain. So this is expected as the duo skills for the terrain usually are seen with the 2 turns of setup, but again, that 2 turn does not mean much if you override that terrain. It's not going to be staying there. And you also get the plus 10 speed for the foe to follow up attack, the visible status effect that I believe Desert I did introduce, so he can give that to himself, and the 3 space allies, so that is gonna be pretty useful, and it can double down and stack up with stuff like Clever Fighter, Ed Scales. So for those kinds of half frozen or the rift effects, if you may, it does help. There isn't really any kind of official name. I'm still searching and thinking about it. Like, what should I name it? I did call it half frozen, but then we also have the rift effect. So let me know if you have some kind of suggestion, because keep in mind, there's also the other half of this effect, which pretty much makes it easier for you to make a follow-up attack. So it's probably got to be something that can match up, like tempo or not follow-up with the other half. He is a trainee BST unit, as you would expect out of a young dragon out of him, and even if he wasn't trainee, he still has the dual skill scoring essentially in arena as 215 BST, so he is going to be a very high scoring unit with the distant counter Dragon Sacred Seal, and it's kind of funny that he needs the High Dragon Wall sloppy skill to score the highest to his peak potential from his legendary version. High Dragon Wall is not the best. It's just outclassed functionally when it comes to ward blocking with the lower ground or higher ground itself, but for the arena scoring, it is something you may have to do if you want to optimize to the max level. And then finally we have got young Leo. So after his Valentine version, he does get a really solid ult as the Red Mage Cavalier, and he has got Slaying built in his Tome of Dusk. It also has counter remaining movement just like Elise, and he gets the extra action on his assist use, which is going to be once per turn. So it may be a movement assist or rally assist, and this is amazing because he is a tactician in a way and he plans out his things. So it's a nice thing and extremely powerful on a range unit like him, in my opinion, because you can use that to position yourself better with swap, reposition, drawback, and pretty much Chroms and Lucinas have the monopoly on that kind of extra action from the assist. So this is going to be good for the Leo fans. You also get -1 cooldown pulse after you act, and this is after acting, so this is middle of the turn, kind of like Ninja Lucina. So that's the pulse effect, but only to the unit, not to the other ally that you use your assist on. Leo is mainly going to be planning for himself here, and if your unit acted for 2 or less times, then after he has acted, there's going to be a resistance check, and depending on the foes that are in that range, you're going to be having the attack -7 and resistance -7 and the sabotage effect on 3 rows and 3 column foes. And if the foe is also in the cardinal direction, then he is going to be doing his signature manipulation of gravity with the gravity status, akin to the Brynhildr Tome. So that's amazing. I really love that effect. So he kind of wants you to not act that many times with a dancer, and as it is, dancers nowadays do not see as much use unless they are something absurd like Spring Plumeria, or even Attuned Azura with her mobility in a way, and her Canto and the Shadow Shift utility that she can give. So the extraction is incentivized, but still, even if you act multiple times, it is going to be applied middle of the turn, so it's not affected by the cleansing of Freyr. So unless we get like on command, middle of the turn, cleansing like Ymir, it is not the easiest to counter is what I'm trying to say. He also gets plus 14 to all of his stats. He also has a true damage based on 20% of his resistance, and it does get added into his AoE specials because AoE nuking is basically going to be his playstyle. He also gets 50% damage reduction piercing in the combat. This is not applied on the AoE special. There isn't any kind of AoE piercing yet for that kind of damage reduction, so it's mainly the piercing in the combat itself, which can pretty much try and help you finish off the enemies in a way. And you do have the AoE nuking, which is not the easiest to do with all of this AoE damage reduction and the stone terrain. So you will need a bit of support to hit the hardest and to make sure that the terrain does not come in your way. It's again not going to be the easiest, but he does have the support for it for himself and his kit with crystalline water and also the detect skill. And as you've seen me talk about speed defense detect on Ninja Lucina, I'm a big fan of this skill because it's the middle of the turn debuff. It's not all that easy to cleanse, and it has got the global lull attack resistance built in it. So yeah, Elise has got the treachery effect, but here her brothers have got the lull effect. So they just counter her anyways because they're the big brothers. They just have more experience, I suppose, for countering that kind of thing. And he also has the attack resistance inside Hone. He's got 2 new skills, pretty much his entire kit built right from the get-go. But still, this could be replaced with Fatal Smoke because it does help with the AoE nuking, even though his defense is not the highest to, challenge the opposing defense checks of that. So Leo can provide that utility, and the extraction economy is always useful in game modes like Summoner Duels, for example, because if you do not have Chroms, Lucinas, or Hathrens, then the self-sustained extraction of a ranged unit like him is useful for the positioning of lingering nuking, and he doesn't really inflict the isolation status on himself, so you have that flexibility. It's just once per turn, and sometimes that's all you need for gaining the upper hand. And then finally, we have got the Grail free-to-play unit of this batch in Young Xander. I still remember Xander used to be quite an elusive unit that a lot of people were waiting for in the first year of the game because we faced him as an enemy, but he wasn't released as a Grand Hero Battle unit for a long time, along with Camus, because of his distant counter weapon. So this time he doesn't have that. Siegfried is not really there for the shooting from a range, and he has got Sword of Dusk. It has +3 attack, counter remaining +1 movement, which is really good for a free-to-play unit, honestly. And he has got the -5 attack speed defense Crux, so it gives the guaranteed follow-up attack to him and the allies, and also gives the defensive tempo effect, the null cooldown +1. So it does help with the tanking against stuff like Flash Barrow, the special charges status, again countering poor little Elise here with her special charges effect. This is like so perfectly countered. And then he also gets +9 to all of his stats because he essentially gets the other stats from the Crux debuffs, and he also gets the flat and true damage reduction on the level of Legendary Xander, which is not bad because it is going to be counting, the foe's HP. So I love the callback to that of the amazing remix and refine that Legendary Xander got. So it is going to be making him bulky, but only on the physical side. His resistance is quite lacking, but you are able to use that with many of the skills. So I'll be making a full video on him. Love the fact that these young banner units with the even Grail options always end up having the preferred weapons. But yeah, it's good to have a free-to-play Sword Cavalier compared to an Axe Cavalier or Lance Cavalier, I would say. And the new Sacred Seals are pretty good. Slick Fighter is good in combination with the value of the free attuned Hector because he has got Wily Fighter, and I mean Slick Fighter is comparatively harder to get on Nidhogre. You may want to fodder her for the other skills sometimes depending on your barracks, so Wily Fighter is a bit easier to get the value of, I suppose, with Distant Counter Echo or the Twin skill if you have the prerequisite fodder. So it's a good Sacred Seal, but mainly it's going to be used on the near saviors because Hardy Bearing Far Saviors are the necessary thing for, you know, the tanking of the nukes that we've got nowadays at range. That may be also the case for the melee tanking now with the trample of Young Camilla. And then we've got the snack skill, decent skill, but mainly it's only as, you know, there as the last resort option for these supportive units. So I hope you all enjoyed this breakdown. I think that Young Camilla is certainly going to be a meta threat that you would need to benchmark against as a near savior. Duo Corrin, not so much. I feel like being a fast armor with the history that we've got. And Young Elise is amazing value for 4-star focus. Young Xander is also a fantastic Grail unit. And I'm glad that, you know, Leo did not get just the short end of the stick and he got a preferred weapon. Even though he didn't get a preferred skill, would be nice, but hey, maybe later in Leo at this rate as Sakura got a lettering version for herself. So you can click the link on the screen right now to check out my breakdown of the refines that should be up hopefully a bit after this video, and you can also subscribe and hit the notification bell because YouTube sub boxes are about as functional as your warp blocking against Young Camilla. So with that said, I'll see you guys next time. Thank you so much for watching and have a great day.